And welcome back, everyone. So we are back here. Of course, today's round number 5 at Norway Chess. Now, in a previous round, I talked about my game first, and apparently I got cut off yesterday. So for that reason, I'm going to do everything in a reverse order, where I talk about the other games first before talking about my game. So it's pretty interesting so far. I mean, the most interesting game, obviously, is between Fabiano and Hikaru. This has this classic E4 variation in the Four Knights English. I played this quite recently in the American Cup against Wesley. It was played in the World Championship, of course, between Ding and Nepo. And this whole line with Bishop C5 is supposed to be objectively safer than Bishop B4. It should be more forcing, per se. Fabiano, it appears, has kind of surprised Hikaru. He's played this rookie one line. Now, my guess as I think about that position is most likely it's probably completely fine for black, but I suspect it's one of these situations where you have to start playing like a complete lunatic or a 3500 computer. And probably, just thinking about it, I was wondering if black should take on e6 with a pawn, go queen e5, king f7, king e8, and just try to play the position. And I think it's fine, but the problem is, again, from a practical standpoint, it's probably much easier for white to play since your black can get stuck in the center. But I'm betting that if you were to look at the position with Stockfish, it's going to say that it's complete zero, it's completely fine, white is nothing. So it feels like Fabiano's kind of gambling on it. The Hikaru won't be able to play that sort of style. So it's going to be quite interesting. Magnus's game, of course, we have the Catalan with knight c3. This whole h4, e4, and it's going to be very aggressive. Going to be a wild game. Very, very unlikely that will be anything quick. What else do we have? We have Noterbeck versus Gukesh, which of course is this old Shabalov g4 and the semi-Slav. This whole h3, this h3 move, I feel like I've seen it, but not probably in the last, not in the last 20 years. I remember I was an up-and-coming player in the early 2000s. I actually played this line quite a bit, this whole G4 line. In fact, the longest game that I ever played was in this G4 variation. I believe it was against Zhu Chen. It was something like 229 moves in Tata Steel, and God only knows, 2004, 2005. Although in that game, I believe she played Bishop B4. She didn't take the pawn on G4. So that's actually interesting as well. And then the other game is the game between Wesley and Ali Reza. Of course, there's this whole classic Grunfeld line, this whole queen a5, queen a2, rook b1, rook b7, etc., etc. I remember, I think it was 1999. There was this famous New in Chess yearbook that I remember studying quite avidly. There was a game that was played between, I believe it was Alexander Halifman and Peter Lecko. Maybe I'm wrong on the players, certainly, but I remember there was it was 30 pages or something of nonstop analysis of this whole long line in the Grunfeld. And I think nothing has changed objectively. It's still considered to be a draw, but it's pretty much going to be a memory test for Ali Reza, whether he can remember the correct lines, because Wesley is basically saying if you play it correctly, you'll draw. If you make even one mistake, you're going to be much worse if not losing. So that's also interesting, probably a big memory test there for Ali Reza. As far as my game goes, sort of playing it by feel. Now, the thing is, I prepared something. I played this Bishop's opening, and I thought I'd just play a slow game. But one thing I realized is because Tari changes move order and just the general sequence of moves, I've actually played a lot of games in similar positions to what I had. So for that reason, I'm deciding to change it up by playing knight f3. Probably in at least 100 games online, I played queen f3, knight g2, etc. against many players, most prominently being this guy Nicholas Theodorou, Criari online. I swear I've had the position I don't know how many times. But I think because Tari watches my streams as well, I'm changing it up, and that's why I played knight f3 here. And probably it's going to turn back into some kind of weird Italian-ish, but black is a pawn on c6 instead of a knight. Now, I don't know if that's better, if that's worse, but of course I literally don't care. You just play chess. And considering how Tari struggled, I'm just trying to keep all the pieces on the board. And more importantly, my trainer, Chris Littlejohn, who's here, he actually signed up to do this whole Magnus fantasy thing. And I remember him saying before the game, he was worried because I think he has... I think one of the pieces he has is me or something, is the kingside bishop. And so when I went bishop c4, he's very worried that Tari would play something like knight c6, knight a5, take the bishop right away, and it would maybe cost him a bunch of points in fantasy. But now I think it's much more likely I'm going to keep the bishop on the board, maybe go c3, bishop c2 down the road. And so at least for my trainer, in terms of the whole fantasy pool, he's probably doing well. But at any rate, it's going to be a very, very long, very, very slow game ahead of us in my game. But all the pieces are on the board, and that's definitely gives me probably a better chance to win the game than if there were a bunch of trades already. So I feel pretty decent.